Mysteriously, the tracks also reveal that the entelodonts were letting the competition get closer to the prey.
They're following the main herd, but they're not as close in time.
Why would a hungry entelodont on the trail of a meal allow another predator to rush in for the kill? The answer may lie in the most puzzling evidence of all.
What's interesting, the rhinos are going that way, and the entelodonts are running at about a 45-degree angle to the rhino trail.
Zigzagging seems a strange path to take if the hyenodon was closing in on the prey. But some experts believe entelodonts might have had a very good reason to zigzag. A reason revealed by a CAT scan. When anatomist Larry Whitmer modeled the surface of an entelodont's brain, one exceptionally large nerve cluster got his attention.
The size of these things right here. And what these are nerves that are actually bringing sensory information in from the snout. This was no bloodhound, but it still had a very respectable sense of smell, and this smelling apparatus here certainly would have been well adapted to pick up the smell of a carcass.
And that could explain why the toadstool park entelodont zigzagged while following the rhinos and hyenodon. Zigzagging could have helped its nose track the smell of a kill.
It's searching. If, say, something's here or here, as you go around it, as the wind brought the scent to you, you'd be able to basically triangulate in on it and go find it. So if the wind's from this direction and you're upwind, you'd miss it, but as you came this way, you'd be downwind and catch it, and you could double back.
It puts its nose up in the wind, it catches the scent, and then it's going to start zigzagging along, walking from one side of the riverbank to the other till it picks up a smell, and then it'll start zeroing in on it. And by moving from side to side, it's able to pick up changes in that smell and zero in which direction it wants to go. How do we know this behavior? Because animals with good smell do that today.
Modern predator behavior could provide crucial clues as to how the entelodont lived. There's no doubt that this 30-million-year-old battle tank was built to kill, but it may have let others do the killing and then moved in to take possession.
One of the strategies we often see that takes place is where one animal will chase another one off of a carcass. We see this at Yellowstone National Park, where wolves will bring down an elk and a grizzly bear will chase off the wolves because it's bigger, it's nastier.
This might have happened to the hyenodon at Toadstool Park. The hyenodon has run down and killed an exhausted rhino and is feasting on the carcass until the pig crashes the party. The razor-jawed beast goes from fearsome predator to underdog. The hyenodon might get in a few blows, but the entelodont's bulk would overpower its rival. Entelodont had the tools to take any carcass it wanted.
I can't think of any other carnivore that might stand up to it.
Some experts argue that this is the true secret of the creature's success. An entelodont could hunt, but it didn't need to be a full-time predator. Instead, it let true predators do the hunting and killing, and then stole the fruits of their labor.
Stealing food from a hyenodont, even if it meant getting into a battle with a hyenodont, would probably take a lot less energy than having to hunt for food and kill food on its own.
If scavenging was its lifestyle, the entelodont's complex bioengineering doesn't look so strange. Entelodont had the eyes of a hunter, the nose of a scavenger, the front teeth of a meat-eating carnivore, and the back teeth of a plant-eating herbivore. It may have evolved from a plant-eater into an omnivore, a creature that could eat whatever was available in a radically changing world.
And so in reality, what this animal ate was anything it wanted. That's part of the reason why these animals were as successful as they were for as long as they were on the planet.
The entelodont's success was about to be tested by an ever-evolving planet. The Earth was growing cooler, and the landscape was changing. Some of the entelodont's fiercest rivals would not survive, but the pig from hell was about to show it could withstand the test of evolution by getting bigger. "25 million years ago, entelodont reigned supreme. It roamed the North American Badlands, eating everything, fearing nothing, taking any food it wanted."
Well, we're talking about the biggest, meanest animal that ever walked the Badlands, and was one of the most ferocious animals that probably ever walked the earth.
Nothing could stop the entelodont from dominating their world for millions of years to come. Nothing, that is, except planet Earth. 25 million years ago, the time known as the Miocene began. The Earth grew even colder, and once again, North America began to change.
The trend towards drying, a more arid environment continued, and you see woodlands become less frequent, become more scattered, spotty, confined along rivers. So you're talking about an open grassland environment very similar to what we think of the Great Plains today.
The fossil record reveals that as plant foods grew more scarce, mass extinctions began. Survival depended on traveling long distances to find something to eat.
One of the selective factors that we see going on is animals becoming larger because it enables them to cover larger distances to find the food resources that they need to survive.
And that meant that predators were confronted by a life or death problem. Now, the animals they hunted were bigger, faster, and much harder to kill.
It's like an arms race. If the prey become much larger, they become too big for carnivores to handle, and so the carnivores have to get larger in order to be able to feed on these larger prey items.
Some predators, such as Hyenodon, couldn't meet the challenge. After 10 million years as North America's apex hunter, it disappeared from the fossil record, and that put entelodont's survival on the line.
When the predator is gone, the scavenger is now in danger. The scavenger now needs to adjust its lifestyle. And if the scavenger isn't very flexible, it's going to have a difficult time.
And in fact, the so-called pig from hell disappeared from the fossil record at about the same time. But this species wasn't gone. Entelodonts evolved to rule the North American plains with a vengeance. This pig hadn't become extinct, it had supersized. This new version stood over 2 meters tall and was 4 to 5 times the size of its predecessor. It still had a battle tank body and a sprinter's legs. Its skull and jaws were now even more massive and more intimidating. It was bigger than a modern bison. The experts call it Dinosaurs, a name meaning terrible hog. Terrible enough to earn a nickname of its own, the Terminator pig.
Dinosaurs. This is the monster of monsters. This is the beast of beasts. The skull alone is almost a meter long. This thing could bite through anything. The canines are this big around. They're just an enormous animal. And what is it doing?
The answer lies at Agate Springs, Nebraska, one of the few places in North America where Dinosaurs fossils are found. 24 million years ago, this place was a watering hole, an oasis in the arid sea of grass. Hundreds of animals, many of them rhinos, gathered here to drink. And as the drier, colder planet killed off their food supply, they came here to die, making Agate Springs a paradise for predators and a favorite haunt of the Terminator pig.
This thing was eating the big animals. We think that this guy was specializing on the large rhinos that lived at the time, on the calicotheres that lived here at Agate Springs. This is a limb bone from a calicothere, and in it we have a bunch of bite marks made by either a predator or a scavenger. The entelodont premolar, one of the teeth you find just behind the canine, appears to match these holes very well.
When its crushing jaws bit into some of the Mioceno's biggest mammals, Dinosaurs was chewing on more than meat.
But the important part of this bone is this end here, where it's been broken off. The animal bit through the bone, sheared it off, and then had access to the nutritious marrow that was inside.
Bone marrow is one of the most nutritious foods an animal can eat. And in times of mass extinction, it would have been a prime source of nutrition. As the Miocene climate change killed off thousands, a diet from scavenged bone marrow may have allowed the Terminator pig to thrive.
The long bones contain marrow, which is good for several years after an animal dies. So think of it as canned fat that would be available during a drought. So the pigs could still find food after a massive die-off, even if they're looking at mostly skeletons.
The Terminator pig was the pinnacle of entelodont's evolution. This beast had supersized to survive the Miocene's challenge. And it very nearly succeeded, but not quite. Because in this new world, survival would ultimately depend on a skill set even the Terminator pig didn't possess. 20 million years ago, a new monster predator arrived in North America. The bear dog. The Miocene epoch, 20 million years ago. In what's now northwest Nebraska, Dinosaurs, aka the Terminator pig, is settling down to eat. The chances are good that its meal will be interrupted. With its huge size, it could handle just about any threat to its dinner. Except a threat it had never seen before: the bear dog. A recent arrival from Asia, this savage, bone-crushing beast wouldn't back down from any fight. The bear dog migrated from its homeland in China and Mongolia across the Bering Strait to North America about 23 million years ago. Just about the time that North America's top predator, the hyenodon, suddenly disappeared. Scientists suspect that it wasn't a coincidence.
They certainly were probably much better predators in lots of ways compared to Hyaenodon. And so it's a reasonable expectation that they probably drove the last of Hyaenodon to extinction in North America.
With Hyaenodons gone from North America, the bear dogs faced off with their only remaining competition, the Terminator pig. Dinohyus relied on its massive size and killing jaws, two advantages its ancestors had once deployed against Hyaenodon. But the bear dogs counterattacked with new evolutionary weapons. Its first weapon was speed. With its heavily muscled, top-heavy body, Dinohyus could be a fast runner in short bursts. But on the vast open plains, the bear dog's bioengineering was perfectly suited for long-distance pursuit of prey that was becoming much harder to catch.
When you look at the skeleton of this animal, it's a much more sophisticated, much faster running animal. We see longer legs in the horses, longer legs in the camels. So if it came to running down prey items, this animal would have had an advantage.
Its next weapon was its teeth. Entelodonts ate well because their jaws and teeth could tear flesh and crush bone to extract its highly nutritious marrow. But bear dogs could do these things just as well. In fact, even better.
It's a great animal at biting bone, eating bone, crushing it.
And it also has a set of teeth that are sharper than any entelodonts. Entelodonts, for example, wear the tips of their huge canines off, and they're not actually very good for puncturing, probably because they spent so much time crushing bone with them. This animal never does that. Its canine teeth are always much sharper. It also has better slashing teeth in its jaw than any entelodont had. So in many ways, it did a better job of what entelodonts had done than entelodonts ever did.
The bear dogs could outrun and outbite the Terminator pig. And they had a third weapon the entelodont never possessed. The deadliest power ever to evolve on Earth.
Bear dogs actually had much more advanced brains. Brains that were much more like what we see with modern animals. So where these entelodonts had relatively archaic, simple, smooth brains, these bear dogs actually had a much more expanded neocortex that was more highly folded. These were more sophisticated animals.
Instead of developing brain power, entelodonts had responded to the Miocene challenge by supersizing into Dinohyus. For almost 20 million years, they had ruled their world by brute force. But no more. From now on, brains, not brawn, would decide who won and who lost nature's battle to survive.
The mammalian world was fully caught up in this neural arms race. That arms race was starting to take place, and these entelodonts apparently weren't taking part in that. That may have actually put these animals at something of a disadvantage. This was an animal that almost certainly was driven mostly by instinct, with fairly predictable, stereotyped responses. This was not a clever animal.
In combat, Dinohyus would have been bigger and stronger, but brain power could have given bear dogs the decisive advantage. Today, intelligent predators like wolves make up for their smaller size by hunting in packs to execute a creative plan of attack. Bear dogs might have followed the same strategy against Dinohyus.
It's very difficult for Dinohyus to compete with the bear dogs. With a pack of bear dogs, even a large Dinohyus would have a difficult time chasing them away from a kill.
these smaller, less powerful, but more clever animals potentially were able to actually steal kills away from Dino-Hyas. That they actually could have used different kinds of techniques, fooling Dino-Hyas, being able to lead it away, or to actually even take on Dino-Hyas itself in actual combat.
And so this is a more advanced animal in terms of its teeth, in terms of its speed, in terms of its overall body size, and especially in terms of its intelligence. This thing has a much larger brain for its body size than does any entelodont. This animal had entelodonts beat in almost every way you can think of.
Within a few million years, after bear dogs arrived in North America, they had squeezed Dino-Hyas out. Its favorite food, the calicothea, was also extinct. Without this meal to sustain its own massive bulk, the Terminator pig was forced to compete directly with bear dogs for smaller prey. And that meager food source wasn't enough. The supersizing that had once guaranteed success was now a fatal flaw.
Eventually, it got to the point where it is no longer advantageous to keep getting bigger because you reach a point of diminishing returns, that the amount of food you get by stealing from other animals does not compensate for your needs to maintain a population.
Unable to get the calories it needed, the Terminator pig became the last entelodont.
So if your prey goes extinct, you're likely to go extinct as well. Just getting large is not a good idea for the future.
Despite its rapid demise, entelodont was an evolutionary success. It dominated its environment for nearly 20 million years. It had the ability and intelligence to either hunt, scavenge, or forage, allowing it to survive on any available food source. This behavior is now the norm for more modern omnivores, like bears and humans. And some think a bit of entelodont's predatory instinct still lives on.
When I was a kid growing up on a farm, I was always told, don't fall down the pig pen, they'll eat you.
But the entelodont's living legacy isn't what fascinates the experts. Science is unraveling its secrets. Nothing else quite like it has ever walked the earth. All we know is that this strangest of creatures, this toothy beast with an appetite for destruction, dominated its brutal, dangerous world for tens of millions of years. A powerful tribute to the entelodont, perhaps the most unusual and the most mysterious of all prehistoric predators.